Hello, and welcome to the training regarding incorporating student voice into the LCAP. Today's audio will be by Allyson Baptiste, MSW, who's a part of Kern County Foster Youth Services and Homeless Education Coordinating Program for Kern County Superintendent of Schools. So first, what is the LCAP? The LCAP, or the Local Control and Accountability Plan, is a 3-year plan that describes the goals, actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes that address state and local priorities. The LCAP provides an opportunity for LEAs to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet their local needs. Many of you have probably heard of the LCAP or worked with the LCAP in your LEA, but today we're going to discuss how student voice can be incorporated into the LCAP. So let's first talk a little bit about the history of LCAP creation. So many of you have also probably heard of the Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF. LCAP followed the creation of LCFF. Now, what is LCFF? LCFF is when districts receive funding based on the students they serve, with greater flexibility to use these funds to improve outcomes of students. The LCAP system in the state of California can be seen on the left side, and it's called the empowerment model. There's a focus on students, the board reviews policy, the state provides funding, the local board empowers schools, results are reported to the public, the local board sets policy, and there's community involvement. On the right side of the screen, you can see where funds come from when we're discussing the LCAP. So LEAs have a base grant, which is an established uniform per student base grant with different rates for different grade spans. These differences are intended to recognize the higher cost of education at higher grade levels. Then on top of a base grant, you can also get a supplemental grant. And that's where LCFF factors in. So LCFF acknowledges that English learners, low-income students, and foster youth students have greater needs requiring more resources. For each English learner, low-income student, or foster youth student, districts can receive an additional 20% of the adjusted base rate per student. When we're discussing low-income students, that's where our McKinney-Vento or homeless students would factor in to the supplemental grant. And then on top of the base and supplemental grant, districts who serve more than 55% of English learners, low-income students, and foster students will receive an additional 50% of the base grant per student for each student above 55% of enrollment. So homeless McKinney-Vento students can definitely fall under what's called SED, or socioeconomically disadvantaged students, or we also call them low-income students for funding reasons. So we talked a little bit about how LCAP and LCFF are connected, but here's a little bit more information. Because the extra funding due to LCFF is given to support our most needy students, including our homeless and low-income students, districts must articulate their plans. And the plan that they articulate is the LCAP to support these students and how they plan to spend these funds. Therefore, every supplemental or concentration funding must be accounted for within the LCAP. This is for transparency purposes. Parents and LCAP approvers must be able to identify what actions the district is taking to support these students. So, for example, our homeless students that fall under the low income category, we need to make sure that our LCAP shows how we're supporting these students and how we plan to spend the funds to support these students. LCFF has 8 state priorities for LEAs to utilize. Student voice initiatives fall under these quote-unquote engagement priorities. So as you can see here, student voice initiatives can fall under priority 3, which is parent and family engagement. They can fall under priority 5, which is pupil engagement, which also assists with things like attendance rates and chronic absenteeism. And student voice initiatives fall under priority 6, which is school climate, which also has to do with local measures, suspension rates, and expulsion rates. There are 5 LCAP elements, and student voice initiatives fall under the 2 highlighted in orange here: engaging educational partners, because students are educational partners, and increased or improved services for unduplicated pupils. So now, as a reminder, what is student voice? And if you haven't done the full training on student voice basics or student voice 101, I highly encourage you to go on the www.kern.org/HIP website and watch and listen to the Student Voice 101 or Student Voice Basics training to understand more of what student voice is. But as a reminder, student voice is the practice of educators intentionally, purposefully, and systematically eliciting student viewpoints on a specific topic for improvement purposes. Again, what's the most important here is that student voice practices are intentional, purposeful, and systematic. A student voice project would not be one in which a teacher has a random conversation with a student about things that they like or don't like. A student voice initiative or project is intentional and purposeful. So it would be a structured program or a structured feedback response and then once the feedback is received, that feedback is used to actually make systemic change. So, how does student voice help homeless students, for example? Student voice increases student engagement, lowering rates of chronic absenteeism and high school dropout rates. If you have not watched or listened to the Student Voice Basics training, please do, as in that training, there is a review of some research studies that go over this. This was proven by the research study done in 2009 by Mitra and Gross. Student voice also helps homeless students by giving them a sense of agency over their personal lives and educational futures. Many of our homeless students often feel like they do not have control over what's happening with them, and giving them a sense of empowerment and a sense of voice will give them a sense of agency, which helps increase their academic motivation. And the last point, student voice increases academic motivation. So students who believe they have a voice in school are 7 times more likely to be academically motivated, proven by the Quaglia Institute. So how does this all fit into your LCAP book, for example? Engaging educational partners is just a chapter in your entire book. So if your LCAP is a book, then engaging all educational partners would just be a chapter. And engaging youth specifically or students specifically is a subcategory of educational partners. It's very important in the LCAP to make sure that you're communicating to your communities how you're serving your students, how you're using your student input. And if you're not using your student input, why are you not using your student input? You can use student voice projects for data evaluation. So in your LCAP, you also need to be able to defend why you are continuing to use certain strategies or programs to benefit homeless youth or low-income youth. You can actually utilize student voice projects to obtain qualitative and quantitative data necessary for that evaluation. Personal narratives can be used to defend if a strategy is working for your school district or if it's not. Now, how do you pick a project? Maybe you're sitting here thinking, this would be fantastic. I would really love to do student voice projects at my LEA. So not only can I lower the rates of chronic absenteeism and high school dropout rates and increase school climate for my homeless students, but I could also obtain data for my LCAP to prove why these strategies are working, but you're not sure what project to choose or what to move forward with. So lucky for you, on the www.kern.org/HIP website, there are 3 student voice idea menus. They're broken down between what takes low effort, medium effort, and high effort by different LEAs. Every LEA and or school site should be able to at least implement one low effort idea, even if you are lacking resources. If you have more resources and more adult supporters willing to support a student voice initiative, it is highly encouraged that you move forward with a medium or high effort idea, just because you will get even better response for your whole school. However, if you're lacking resources, please at least look at implementing one of the low effort ideas. It's very important, no matter what project you choose, to keep your project diverse. You need to make sure that all student voices are heard. And the reason this is important is that typically in student councils, student government, etc., which are clubs or organizations that administrators typically listen to, there's very typical types of students that are picked or are a part of those organizations. And unfortunately, they often do not include our homeless or McKinney-Vento students. It's very important that you make an intentional effort to recruit and get homeless students involved in these efforts. You also need to make sure that whatever project you utilize, you're making an intentional effort to make sure that those homeless students are being heard. As a reminder, the LCAP is made to make schools equitable. And I really like this quote on the right from the Great Lakes Equity Center, which says, "Without youth, school reform efforts are limited to adults' understandings of what counts as equity." Often adults or school personnel have the best of intentions, but we as adults often do not see things the same way. And what we find equitable may definitely not feel equitable to our students, especially our homeless students. So we have to make sure that we're involving them in all of the feedback we're receiving and all of the student voice projects we're receiving to make that true systemic change. Now, when involving students in any kind of project, it's very important to watch out for tokenism. So tokenism happens whenever students are in a formal or informal role, only to say they have a voice. Tokenism actually reinforces adultism by demonstrating adult power and highlighting young people's inability to do work of substance. And this quote is by Adam F.C. Fletcher, who does a lot of work in this field. Tokenism is when we ask a student to participate in something just so we can say a student participated in something, or to check that box on a grant form, on an application, on a year-end report, etc. We have to make sure that we are not exploiting our students and asking them to do something just so we can say a student was involved or we had student voice. If we're going to ask a student to provide their voice or their feedback on a specific topic, we need to be prepared to actually take that feedback in and use it for change purposes. Now, many districts may choose to utilize focus groups to do LCAP work. That is an option you can utilize, even though I do encourage you to go and look at the more the different types of projects on the student voice menus, but many will default to a focus group if they don't know what else to do. So there are benefits of focus groups with students. They are an opportunity to understand student whys and whats behind survey responses they may provide. But the best practices for a student voice focus group is to have a diverse group of about 6 to 8 students within the same grade level. So again, that includes homeless students. You need to address the barriers to attending to ensure all students can attend. So if you have only invited a homeless student to participate in a focus group, but it's after school, and if they miss the bus, they have no transportation back to wherever they're staying, that is not removing the barrier. So you need to make sure that you're removing all barriers in order to make sure that our homeless students can attend. Focus groups with students are very important, but you have to make sure that you do not turn it into a fishbowl effect, where there's a bunch of adults sitting in the room, simply watching and observing the students. It'll make the students feel very, very uncomfortable. And so there should be a limited amount of adults in the room. When the students do arrive to the focus group, they should already know why they're going there. They should not be surprised of what they're attending when they show up. However, when they do show up, it's important to remind them again that they're not in trouble. Many of our homeless students have a lot of trauma that they've endured. And just being pulled in with adults outside of a regular classroom experience at a school can be very traumatizing for them. So please make sure that they know they're not in trouble. Also, and this depends on the age of the student, keep the focus group to 45 minutes to 60 minutes. If they're younger than high school, it would be recommended to keep it closer to 20 to 30 minutes. We do not want our students being overwhelmed with too many questions, but we want them to have enough time to truly provide their feedback on a topic. And the most important part of a focus group is to make sure that whatever adult is in the room can handle the discussion and allow them to speak freely without them feeling as though they're doing something wrong. Our students need to be able to have an open and comfortable space where they can speak freely about what is and what is not working for them on their campus. On this slide, you can see some potential focus group questions. What's very important is to make sure that you are using open-ended questions rather than yes or no responses to truly get more feedback from them and qualitative data. You want to arrange questions within a topic to make them general to specific. So start with a general question, and once they start providing feedback, in order to continue to get responses, you can either ask a more specific question or you can continue to use reflective listening to get them to continue talking. And it's important to ask questions that students can easily understand. As a reminder, many of our homeless students change schools frequently, and they may be way below grade level. So because of that, you need to make sure that the questions are shortened and are easy to understand. And then it's always a good idea to ask a miracle question during a focus group. And a miracle question can be similar to the following. If you had a magic wand and could change one thing to make the experience at our school better for all students, or you can say for homeless students, if it's only homeless students in the focus group, what would it be? That allows students of all ages, kindergarten through high school, to be able to answer in a way that they may more easily understand. No matter what student voice project you choose to utilize, it's extremely important that you close the student feedback loop. Oftentimes, LEAs or school sites may think that they're doing a phenomenal job getting feedback from students and implementing change. Those are only two of the parts of student voice that are important. The most important part may actually be the part we often forget, which is closing the student feedback loop. It is so important to make sure that students not only know what their feedback's being used for, but if it was used, and if it wasn't used, why it wasn't used. It's okay if sometimes the feedback cannot be utilized. There's reasons why things can't be utilized, maybe lack of funding, resources, practicality, staff time, etc. But if a student provides feedback and you choose not to utilize it, someone needs to close that feedback loop with them, come back to them, explain why that feedback could not be utilized, thank them for the fact that they were honest and open with you and provided suggestions. And then maybe together you could come up with a interim or a type of strategy in the middle that would fit both of your needs. But regardless, what often happens is we will ask students for their feedback and not ever tell them if we're using it, if we're not using it, and what changed because of it. Our homeless students often feel like they are not heard. They often feel like they have no authority or agency over their lives or their educational futures. And so by closing the feedback loop and letting them know that you care, it can definitely instill a sense of confidence in them and build trust and transparency between students and school staff, which ultimately leads to better school climate. Now, that was a quick version of how to incorporate some student voice tactics into your LCAP. If your school site or LEA is interested in more individual coaching on incorporating student voice into your LCAP, please email our program at fosteredcoordinator@kern.org. And I also encourage you to check out the www.kern.org/HIP website so you can see all of the rest of the student voice trainings we have available there. Thank you.